ourselves first. And just to let you guys know that we're going to be recording the session, so it will be posted on the website after after the recording becomes available. So I'm Dr. Jessie Myler. I'm one of the co-directors for the Environment and Sustainability Program at Georgetown. And I will pass it over to my co-director, Dr. Amster.
Yeah, I'm Randall Amster. I'm also, along with Dr. Myler, one of the co-directors of the new degree in Environment and Sustainability. I've also previously been the co-director of the Environmental Studies program, which was a precursor and important stepping stone on the way to this new major in Environment and Sustainability.
All right, so can we have next slide, please? And we're just going to share a little bit about the joint nature of the program to get started, and the fact that this is a partnership between the College of Arts and Sciences and the Earth Commons Institute at Georgetown. So this degree, this BS in Environment and Sustainability, is a joint effort, and it really is a partnership in every way through the entire trajectory of the degree, from the first year and when students first start in the degree all the way through graduation.
I think it's important just to note what both of these entities are and how they arrive at this partnership. So the College of Arts and Sciences is what many people probably think about when they think of Georgetown, the sort of liberal arts space spanning the range of possible majors and minors. There are other schools around our campus, and they're important as well. The College of Arts and Sciences is sort of a central gathering point as the largest school in our Georgetown University ecosystem. And that sets up the Earth Commons Institute, which is a relatively newer entity that but has a long trajectory as well, working as a space of faculty research and networking, and has moved into the curricular space in recent years and begun working on ways to bring an emerging sense of concern and possibility around environmental issues into that conversation with Georgetown's long liberal arts tradition. And I think that's a really exciting partnership, not just the administrative structure of these two entities partnering, but that merger of the long-term trajectory of Georgetown's curriculum with this infusion of cutting-edge environmental engagement is a really powerful and palpable moment. And it's worth just pausing on that as we set the tone for today.
Thanks, Randall. Can we have next slide? Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about the BS, the Bachelor of Science. Randall, do you want to share about that?
Yeah, so we'll just say, a few things at scale here, and then we'll zoom in. So we'll do a little zoom out and zoom in. So zooming out for a moment. So this is a Bachelor of Science degree. It is also, though, a balance of what we might properly think of as science with policy and humanities and justice and ethics. It is about engaging environmental issues which are complex by nature, through a confluence of skills and habits of being, capacities, both intellectual and embodied, aimed at cultivating a sense of understanding, creativity, and action. And the reason we start here is that it's important to recognize that when we lean into these kinds of issues straightforwardly, they do become complicated very quickly. They implicate us as individuals, they scale into our communities, they call us forth as members of societies, and then, of course, as beings sharing a world at a global level. And all of that, demands a kind of input that maybe takes this degree a little bit beyond what some other fields may ask of you. Like, we're asking folks to bring their whole selves to this work. We're asking students to bring a sense of possibility and creativity, and maybe even deploying the things that we do in the classroom toward action promoting positive change. So there's a lot in here. There's a point of entry that folks will voluntarily make to work into this space, but it's our shared supposition that that's the way that effective and positive change happens. And for us as educators, and I think I can speak for my colleague here, it's very exciting to be able to work with young people in this space, to meet students where they are and help them go where they want to go. This is not a prescription. It's not a lockstep program. And as you'll see, there's much flexibility for students to develop their own journey through what this kind of work looks like. Next slide. So I'll just kind of elaborate slightly more on some of this, that at the end of the day, we really do take seriously the idea that a degree in this kind of intended space should lead to outcomes that uplift and positively impact the world around us. We are seeking to address environmental crisis in innovative and creative ways. We want students to build a toolkit to be change makers, both in their lives and also around environmental issues at scale, to help cultivate sustainable lives and livelihoods. So this is the attempt to harmonize things that are good for us and our communities and ecological systems, but also lead to meaningful and productive livelihoods and ways of making a living in the world. And those two things don't have to be antagonistic. And we're seeing increasingly more spaces that are trying to unite those kinds of outcomes, and also to help build resilience in ourselves and in our communities as we, seek to address the drivers of climate and environmental change, but also to build resilience and a toolkit for adaptation and for living into a world that is changing in some important and profound ways. And, I guess in our mind's eye, we would say this does get us to sometimes imagine a world where everyone who graduates from college at this moment in history can tackle environmental issues with a robust skill set that both leads to fulfilling individual lives, resilient communities, and of course, global impact that helps us address these environmental challenges in meaningful ways.
Thanks, Randall. And with that, we'll move on to talking a little bit about how some of those skills are developed. So we have a very experiential degree program. It has a hands-on learning that is built into the individual courses, as you can see in some of these pictures here, but then also very intentionally built into and integrated into the degree in credit-bearing ways throughout the trajectory of the entire degree as well. So one of the examples is that students are involved in fieldwork and in research in individual classes, including in the environmental science foundation classes in the first year. They're also a part of experiential rotations that take place in the second year of their degree. And then moving on from there, I'm going to go on in a little bit and talk about some of the other curricular components that are also credit bearing, that students are exposed to real world applications, and they're actually they're connected with experts in the field. And so those experiences are authentic and they're connected to the community-based applications that Randall was just sharing about. Next slide, please. One of those experiential components is an environmental immersion that we have incorporated into the degree, where students actually have an experience that is either something that they do abroad, or it's something that they do even in the DC area and the DC community. It could also be something that is domestic and in the US. That is something that's an immersion. We're calling that an environmental immersion. That's part of the global classroom. That's part of the curricular component. Not all students have to do it, but we're strongly recommending that all students participate in this environmental immersive experience that connects to the global and the local components of the degree. Also, we have a professional development component where students are connected to the DC area and the environmental applications on the ground, working with experts and in institutions, organizations, and agencies in the DC region. Additionally, in the final year of the program, in the fourth year, students will be working on a capstone project. It is a 2-semester series of courses where they are working on a project that they develop in the first semester, and then in the second semester goes on to actually put the project into place, working really closely with partner organizations if that's applicable, and then also presenting on that project in the final part of their senior year in a research symposium. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so I just mentioned the internships on the last slide, and this professional development and personal development are integrated into the degree itself. So That personal development is worked into some of the advising that we do throughout the entire program. And we have very close relationships with our students as they start out on the journey through the degree and continue on customizing their pathway that we'll talk a little bit later on in the 3rd and 4th years. So that personalized advising carries through and helps the student to develop both as a student and in their academic career, but actually also outward facing, because that professional development is worked into the degree as well. In the professional development component, students will take a course that is actually called professional development, where students are doing an internship with an accompanying seminar that they're doing at the same time, where they are working through and experiencing real life professional experiences in the environment and sustainability field. There are a number of different organizations that we're developing partnerships with, that we already have existing partnerships with. So it's a wide breadth of options available to the students. I wanted to also mention here as well that part of the personal development component includes a peer leadership component, that students are either given the option to develop peer mentorship or peer teaching capabilities and skills that they put into place, both through a foundational peer leadership course and then also through a practicum that they do in their senior year. Next slide, please. And Randall?
Yeah, so I mean, what we're seeking to do here is, create a program that does make us unique, and also be situated among and between the best practices that have emerged in these fields like environment and sustainability over the last few decades. But there is something different about Georgetown's presence with this dual campus phenomenon. So the way that this model that we've designed here plays out is that students will do 2 years on the Hilltop. That's the campus that most of you will associate with when you think of Georgetown, right? It's it's the impressive buildings and the quad and the sort of texture of that lovely Hilltop campus that we enjoy so much here, where we're in Washington, D.C., but we're also a bit removed from the city in some ways. Like geography does bifurcate to some extent, and you're beginning to see a proliferation of other universities opening campuses or buildings in the more downtown area. So Georgetown has a unique opportunity here, and we think this degree leverages the best of both, where students will do 2 years on the Hilltop, but also 2 years on a new Capitol campus that is emerging as we speak. And it's a really exciting possibility to have 2 presences in DC. So one of the things that makes us different and sets us apart is that Georgetown has a 2 centuries plus presence in DC, and also now has a campus emerging downtown that will provide a kind of connectivity, leveraging that accrued knowledge, wisdom, and capacity that defines Georgetown into that downtown space. But also it opens up the possibility, as Jesse was suggesting, that more community engagement, right? More ways of connecting to and immersing ourselves in the internship frameworks and policy partnerships, and also DC communities as well. And sometimes it's easy to forget that Washington, DC, in addition to being the seat of national power and a space that many influential policymaking entities and lobbying entities find themselves, DC is also a very vibrant community and a community of communities. And being downtown opens up possibilities to be more immersive and more engaged around environmental issues through that portal as well. Next slide. So another piece that makes us unique is that we have intentionally built in a baseline interdisciplinarity into this degree, that we are really gathering together the collective wisdom, expertise, questions, and points of reflection from many different disciplines and diverse perspectives to try to address pressing environmental challenges from a multiplicity of perspectives and angles. It's the view of the program and us who have been working to convene this kind of space, that no single discipline has the key to addressing environmental and climate and sustainability issues by itself, that we need to be working between and among and with all of the various disciplines to have a conversation that is cross-cutting, that does ask hard questions, that looks for emerging knowledge at the interfaces. It doesn't mean that the disciplines don't show up. We still do science, we still do policy, we still do humanities, and we also do all of them. We can do both at the same time. So we sometimes are multidisciplinary, and sometimes we're combining the disciplines to see where those interfaces lead. And I will say that as much as we've built that into the curriculum of this degree, we've also built it into the way that the faculty and students interact in this program as well, that we really are building an interdisciplinary learning community, that we are learning from each other as we go. And as a faculty member, that's an exciting prospect to be learning from colleagues and learning with students across a range of perspectives and disciplines as we tackle these very critical and complex questions. So extending that into thinking about what it looks like to be part of a community that actually cares, let's just sort of sit with that for a moment, that we are comfortable centering this, right? That this is a learning community that cares about issues beyond just our own individual trajectories. And this is very much consistent with Georgetown's mission as a space that is designed to produce people who can be connected to things larger than ourselves and to be of service to the world around us. And it also reflects the fact that as a community, we do care about those who are working and entering this space. We care about taking care of ourselves and building in capacity to do, real in-depth advising, and to have mentorship be a central feature of this program, to have unique experiences together where, we're leveraging the best experiences that are to be found among student groups and campus community connections, that a sense of caring and working together to be people for others is really paramount in the curricular design and the day-to-day operations of this program. Next slide. And just extending that briefly, here's a few specific manifestations of how that shows up, that it isn't just, words that we say, but it's things that we do. We have our Earth Commons, which is a community entity that bridges across Georgetown University. Our Hoya Harvest Garden is a wonderful and impressive space that is a demonstration of these values and virtues of what it looks like when people come together to beautify a space and produce food for the community. Our Office of Sustainability is very vibrant and doing a lot of great initiatives across campus. We're working on building partnerships in Qatar and in Greece. We have our Capital Campus emerging, experiences out at the Jug Bay Wetland Sanctuary, which we're in the beginnings of partnering with as a space that's not too far away, where students can experience environmental issues and do research in different configurations. We partner with our Laboratory for Performance and Politics, our Ethics Lab, and much, much more. So this is about building a network, not just building a program, that we will, as a program, as a learning community, add something to the tapestry of things that happen here at Georgetown, but that also builds its own community texture and integrity at the same time. Next slide.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to share a little bit about the experience that students will have if they pursue this degree. And like Randall shared before, we have it set up so that there's 2 years on the Hilltop campus and 2 years on the Capitol campus downtown. And the way that that works out, I'll go over what is expected in each of those years in a second as well. The first 2 years are intended to be relatively structured, provide all of the foundational material, content, skills that students will develop that then can be built on in the final 2 years, where students are pursuing a custom pathway, working on some more of the professional and personal development components of the program, hopefully pursuing an environmental immersion as well in the 3rd year. And so that those final 2 years have a built-in flexibility. There's the ability to pursue areas of interest, areas of passion, and direct applications into the community and much further abroad as well. Next slide, please. So in those first 2 years, we have the foundational courses that include environment and sustainability science. It's a series of 2 science classes in the first and second semester, where students pursue a range of different, are exposed to a range of different science topics, issues, and applications. They're developing skills that are science-based, and because it is an interdisciplinary science, we're bringing together the sciences in biology, ecology, chemistry, physics, and certainly a number of quantitative components as well. There is a lab associated with that course as well. So there's 2, essentially 4 credit courses, one in the first and one in the second semester. The other foundational areas of focus include environmental ethics, where students will take a 3-credit class in environmental ethics in their first year. And then in the second year, another of the foundational areas is environmental justice, that they will take a 3-credit class in as well. Some of the other areas that students will be focusing on in the first and second years include a series of interruption and integration courses, where they're going to cover a range of different topics and applications in bringing together some of the more multidisciplinary components of the degree and of the areas and the discipline itself, environment and sustainability. And you can see some of those listed here with ecological belonging, well-being, environment and power. And some of those really digging in deep, and some of the applications that are associated with these areas and these subdisciplines. Next slide, please. And then in the third and fourth year, like I was mentioning, really starting to get into some of the details of what your area, your specific area of interest might be. And that could be something very broad, like you're really interested in the topic of water, and you might want to pursue classes that touch on water in different ways, and water science, aquatic sciences, marine sciences. But then also you want to get into the policy aspect of water and how water is being managed. You might be interested in some of the law topics, some humanities that are tied into how do we communicate about water? How do we tell the story about water and try to relate to experiences with water? The community-based components and how the communities are using water. So there are different ways to pursue that custom pathway. Some of the other parts that are inherent in the third and the fourth year curricular components include quantitative reasoning. Those are a range of courses that can be taken to fulfill that requirement. And another one that has more of a category type of course requirement is environmental skills and methods, where there are a number of different courses that can fulfill that requirement. And I mentioned earlier peer leadership, where we have a peer leadership foundations course that's taken in the third year, and then a peer leadership practicum credit-bearing component where students are actually applying what they learn in the peer leadership foundations course. Then there's that 2-semester capstone in the fourth year, where students will be pursuing a research project, likely working with partnership organizations, connecting to the community. And it's something that is helping the students to build their portfolio. So it's not just that professional portfolio that students will graduate with, but they're actually building a personal portfolio as well. And so that capstone project is bringing those things together and applying those skills, the concepts, and the knowledge that they've been building over the course of their degree. And I already mentioned the professional development component. And then earlier I mentioned the environmental immersion as well, where it says optional. It is strongly recommended. We very much hope that all students will have an immersive experience of some sort. And again, we'll have different options available to students in the third year, ranging from a 3-credit immersive experience to a full semester of studying abroad or immersing in a local community in DC or elsewhere in the US. Next slide, please.
So it's, important to not only think about what students do while they're here, but also where students go after they're here. And this is a conversation that we have all the time, and we'll both communicate. Looks like my lights have decided to go out, which is an interesting phenomenon. So, Dr. Marler, would you
I can
wade into
chime
this
in.
while I see
Yes,
if I
go
can
deal
get the
with your
lights back
light.
on? That was auspicious timing. What will you have the power to do, which is to go turn on the lights?
That's excellent. All right. So there are a number of different options for students to pursue upon graduation. And this degree prepares for that range of different options. There are certainly positions that students will be exposed to through the professional development component of the program, as well as through some of the rotations and the other professional development components, not just the course and the internship itself, but some of the other built-in components to the program. Students will be exposed to and prepared to apply for positions in government agencies, not just at the federal level, although we will be connecting and partnering with a number of agencies in the federal government, but also at the local level as well, including in DC and in state and local governments regionally. Working with nonprofit organizations and different NGOs that have on the ground presence, both at the local scale, but then also national and globally as well. And many of those have connections or offices in DC. And so that is one of the inherent benefits to having that double DC presence that Randall was mentioning before. And there's certainly a number of different environmental companies and consulting agencies that are around the area that students will be prepared to apply to. They could also be interested in pursuing a graduate degree, and there are a range of different options there, from environmental law, environmental science, environmental education, certainly into communication, possibly into policy as well. There are so many, and it really does depend on what the interests are and what the trajectory through the custom pathway might be. So some of the other options include some of the graduate degrees at Georgetown as well, and I can elaborate on that later, maybe when we're taking questions, but we have two that we've already launched in partnership with other entities within Georgetown. One of them is the Masters of Science in Environment and International Affairs that is launching this coming year. That's in partnership with the School of Foreign Service. And then last year we launched a Masters of Science in Environment and Sustainability Management in partnership with the Business School at Georgetown. Those are both graduate MS degrees at Georgetown.
And I'll just add that over the years of having students do work in environmental studies, we've seen all of these outcomes and more. Students are very entrepreneurial and very forward thinking, and have found ways to apply knowledge and skills in this area in a wide range of different outcomes in the world. And that, can be a challenging thing sometimes, because, some fields maybe have a more cause and effect or linear trajectory about doing this leads to that. We don't have it quite that precise, but in some ways it's also very powerful and very exciting to open up a lot of possibilities. Students all uniformly go on to do interesting and amazing things, from working with NGOs and educational and advocacy organizations to launching startups and working in established positions and doing communications and policy. All of what Dr. Meyler said, is on the table. But part of it is also the unknown of what the world will demand of us in 5 years. So it is one thing to help provide educational opportunities for students to fit into the world as we find it, and another thing to begin thinking about what kinds of life trajectories, what kinds of careers, what kinds of courses of subsequent action and engagement academically or professionally will be meaningful as things evolve. And that's an interesting question to consider. So to some extent, we've built in some of that uncertainty, but in an exciting way, that this can help set you up to do things that are emerging. We don't always know what is around the next corner, but by building skills, habits of being, competencies, and best practices, we can help position students to do a wide range of things that are applicable now and could be applicable in the near future as well.
Great, thanks, Randall. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is just next steps. What do you want to do next? Do you want to, if you're interested in joining this degree, this program, we would love for you to choose Georgetown and to join us and on this journey in environment and sustainability. The degree itself allows you to register for some of those foundational courses this summer. If you decide to choose Georgetown and pursue this degree, we can help advise you through that. There are, and so some of those foundational courses that you would be taking in your first year, you would choose to take those when you're choosing your courses in July. We have a number of different Earth Commons events that we offer regularly. Some of those are around the Hoya Harvest Garden. We offer annual the Hoya Harvest Festival. We have so many different options for and speakers that are coming to campus. We have a regular weekly Eco Talks event. Every Friday, we have a different speaker come to campus from all sorts of different areas and disciplines within the environment and sustainability sector. Which is a really amazing opportunity for undergraduates and graduate students to get to know some of the experts in the field, hear them speak, but then actually meet with them and talk to them as well, one-on-one. So we have a number of different options there. We can go to the next slide, and we would like to just take your questions now. We've offered a number of different things that hopefully you will ask about. We just touched on briefly, but in order to use our time wisely, we want to hear from you. We want to hear what your interests are and what your questions are about the program. We're happy to and we put a couple of options up here, but certainly you can start by putting them in the chat. We'll and get them going there. And then in just a minute, we'll take down the slides and we'll just be able to have a conversation as well. So Randall, do you want to add to that?
No, just to say thank you all for being here and being interested and taking the time to let us share this with you. I hope you can tell that we're very excited about this. It's been a long process of building this degree, building on foundational blocks that have emerged in recent years. But we really are pleased to be able to share this with you, and we're grateful for your time and interest in what we're doing here. And as Dr. Myler said, we're open to hear any questions or thoughts that you may have and ways that we can be of help. And whether you land here or not, we're still happy to be of help, because this is important work, and we're here because we believe in this work. And we do hope that you join us to do it here. But whatever ways that we can be of service, let us know, and feel free to ask any questions or share any thoughts about what we've shared in the chat. We're happy to continue the conversation that way.
Okay, so with that, I think if we can stop sharing screen there and we can just answer some questions. So it looks like Sophie, thank you so much for putting that in the chat. Does this major leave room for double majoring or minoring? It certainly leaves room for minoring. The minors, we are actually offering a number of new minors actually on the Capitol campus. So there are some different options for pursuing minors. One of them would be to pursue the minor when you're on the Hilltop. And that might coincide with some of your interests as well. Perhaps as you're actually meeting some of the core requirements and thinking about things that you're exposed to for the first time, you might want to pursue some of those classes. The other option is some of the new minors that we are going to be offering downtown in conjunction with other entities, include some of the ones. Randall, do you want to mention some of those? Because you have a better list of those than I do.
We're looking at some new minors that are extrapolations of existing minors, but also new unto themselves. Things like urban studies and urban sustainability, sustainable entrepreneurship and sustainable business, environment and law, environment and health, public policy initiatives. There's a range of things there's also a law and justice minor that's in the process. So the downtown campus, where students will be the final 2 years, will have a suite of new minors and its own minors. Students will also be able to avail themselves of the minors that currently exist in their first 2 years when they're on the Hilltop campus as well. But even within the degree, short of minoring in something, a student doing the environment and sustainability degree can tailor that through their own custom pathway, as Dr. Myler mentioned earlier, where that can be a kind of de facto minor in some ways, whether it's named that way or not, where a student tailors their degree down a particular area of interest, almost serving as a self-design minor in some ways. So we can continue on with some of the other questions. Grace asks, how many students do we plan on having in the degree? Well, first, all of you, obviously, starting with you all, and then adding from there. But Grace, the numbers are still growing. Like, we basically have just launched the program, so we're still in the early stages. But as things scale up, we anticipate the numbers growing fairly rapidly as we move from the Hilltop to downtown and welcoming more students. Your class, the incoming class this fall, will be the first class that really catches this wave on track and has that 4-year trajectory. But we're envisioning over time that the downtown campus will hold hundreds of students. There are already spaces set up as dorms to house that many students. And we expect that the degrees will grow in kind with that capacity, with ourselves and the public policy degree being two major programs that will be housed downtown.
Great. I'll go on to Abigail's question. You mentioned how peer review is used to bolster communication and professional development. I was wondering what else peer leadership specifically entails. So I think you're probably talking about the peer leadership component. We do use peer review too in reading peer-reviewed articles and in working with being able to scholarly sources, but I think that you're talking about peer leadership. So I will answer that. But if that's not correct, Abigail, definitely stick it in the chat and I can come back to another question as well. But the peer leadership is is built into the program with two credit-bearing courses. One of them is the Peer Leadership Foundational course, which students will take in their third year of the program, where they're exposed to and are kind of starting to develop some of the skills that will be needed to actually apply those the peer leadership. And that's a range of different options. So that course is right now, it entails exposure to peer teaching and peer mentorship. We're envisioning that broadening and expanding to include other peer leadership opportunities as well. That's what we're starting with, and we're trying to do that intentionally. So in building very thoughtful and in concrete peer leadership experiences, so that when you get to the peer leadership practicum in the fourth year of the program, you are putting those skills into place. You're applying what you learned in the peer leadership foundational course.
I'm happy to take the next couple of questions. Thomas, you asked about urban sustainability and urban planning. As was noted, that's one of the virtues of having the downtown campus, is it opens up possibilities for engagement on those issues in a much more straightforward way than does being on the edge of the city on the hilltop. And there is a real impetus to bring urban studies and urban planning directly into the conversation as a node. So that means that if there's a minor downtown around those themes, which is still in the works, but no doubt there are courses and practitioners already connected to the downtown initiatives that are thinking through that lens. So you'll certainly see that show up a bit. And then how you bend that in with sustainability, that will be the ways that you sort of custom design your trajectory through this degree. And Sarah asks about, when do you declare the major? So technically, students don't formally declare a major until October or November of their sophomore year. However, students who are interested in doing this degree would at least express that intention early on, and we would begin working with you early on to help shape the trajectory, since that first 2 years is pretty important to hit the ground running with this work. So the formal declaration happens a bit later, and there's good reasons for that as students think about their options and explore the liberal arts. But if you're interested, we do ask that you let us know sooner rather than later, so that we can begin working with you to make sure that we're designing things in an intentional and thoughtful way.
Great, thanks, Randall. And there's a question from Athena: how would double majoring work with the split campus for the 4 years? And the double majoring is not actually possible within the degree, because it is a degree itself. And so what Randall was just talking about, actually, in terms of perhaps treating the custom pathway as a minor, the idea is that you really do get to fine tune that custom pathway to be in line with, as long as it is tied to environment and sustainability, you're able to pursue something that is your area of passion. And so that is the hope, that people that are interested in double majoring but not able to do it within the degree are able to pursue that within the custom pathway. And it looks like Leela or Layla, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, sorry about that, was wondering a bit more about how this degree translates to study abroad. So actually that was when I was talking a little bit about environmental immersion, that could be a study abroad program. We have a number of programs that we've been working with the Office of Global Education at Georgetown, who oversees study abroad within within all of Georgetown's programs. We've been working with them to identify a number of programs already approved by Georgetown to count for credit at Georgetown. And we're also working to expand that, although there are so many already that it's pretty amazing. We have 20 some approved programs that are focused on the environment and sustainability, ranging from things like tropical ecology to environmental policy to Arctic sciences and Arctic policy and and Arctic trade, like all sorts of different components that or different degree or different programs that are relevant to this degree. So it depends what your interests are, but there are already a number that are approved, and we're working with the Office of Global Education to get other programs approved as well. Randall also mentioned some of the Georgetown campuses that we're developing abroad also, and one of them being in Greece, that we're working very closely with our people on the ground in Greece to develop actually a couple of different study abroad programs in Greece that are tied to this degree program specifically.
Thanks, Jesse. Victoria, you asked about being a current first-year student at Georgetown. So it is possible to join the degree after you've been here for a year. We have had students onboarding that way, and that will continue to be possible. So students who, back to the earlier question about when do you declare, technically students won't really declare until the beginning of their sophomore year anyway. But having said that, there are on-ramps and off-ramps. And I think in some ways this anticipates the next question about how the program intersects with the minor. So the major is a scaled up and much more intense full version of what we're doing with environment and sustainability. There is also a minor in the field that students can basically complete the minor within the first 2 years of doing the major. So if there is a reason where a student is pursuing the major, but then finds something else or something that changes their trajectory, you would have essentially earned the environment and sustainability minor in those first 2 years, almost. So there is that, but there is the possibility for students to lateral into this degree after their first year. And if you've done any environmental coursework already in that first year, that would obviously be a bonus, and it would really help propel you into the degree. But we're always happy to work with students who have come in and are thinking about shifting their trajectory. We have had students who were internal transfers. Those things are complicated, but not impossible. But as a matter of just general conversation, students who are first year, who have been here and not necessarily pursuing the degree full on, but then decide they want to, we can work with you to help fashion a pathway into the degree if you're interested in doing that.
Great, thanks, Randall. So Caroline asked, do you find that there are more opportunities for internships and future jobs in government agencies or industrial businesses? And what specifically do you find most graduates go into? Well, it's a range, and that depends on what the interest is. Because this is this degree program partially grew out of an environmental studies minor. We've been able to track and see what environmental studies minors have gone into. The students that we have in the program right now that are pursuing the degree itself, the BS, are interested in a range of different options. And so we will be working with students throughout the entire course of the degree to ensure that they're given the skills and the opportunities to see whether or not those career or potential career trajectories are things that they really are interested in. And so part of that professional development component is about exposure to some of these different areas of work, and to see if it's something that you would like to go into. We are developing partnerships specifically with government agencies, with companies, with consulting firms, with nonprofit organizations, so that there will be a range of options available for the internship opportunities. And then hopefully so that students will see and be able to apply for positions upon graduation at similar entities as well.
I will just say somewhat anecdotally, but not totally anecdotally, that we have seen and been in conversation and communication with students who have graduated with the minor. So that doesn't give you a full picture. It's different when there's a major, when students are really dedicating themselves to this. But through the lens of the minor, over the years, many students do go to law school and do environmental law. That's definitely a common outcome. A myriad of graduate programs all over the world in fields like sustainability and policy that has an environmental component to it. A significant number of students do go into community-based organizations, advocacy organizations, policy organizations. A significant number of students do go into government work, especially being here in DC. That's a likely portal as well. And then students have done things that are completely unique, where they have, defined their own trajectory or launched a startup or been involved in something that may not seem environmental at first glance, but they're often the person bringing the environmental lens into that space. So there's been a lot of really interesting outcomes, but you do see a bit of the clustering. But again, I think with the major and all of the possibilities that opens up, we're likely to see even more of an array of possibilities as well.
I will add to that too, and tie that to Sophie's follow-up question too, because the Earth Commons faculty is representative of a very interdisciplinary faculty. And that is done intentionally to bring people and experts into this program that are representing a lot of different areas of study. And many of those are working together. And like Randall just mentioned, there are a lot of different options. We also have a very strong environmental science faculty component, and feel free to check out the website for different areas of that the faculty work on. Many of them work with students in doing research as undergraduates. So if anybody's interested in pursuing research opportunities, that's certainly something that we are encouraging, that the faculty are looking for as well, in working with undergraduates and giving them some experience doing research outside of the classes, but actually working on specific research projects with faculty. And so Sophie was asking about whether or how many courses are required for the major that are physical sciences, biology, chemistry, etc., compared to social sciences and humanities. And so the foundational courses include environmental science 1 and 2, which are the science foundational courses for the class, for the degree. Those are the, and then we have environmental methods and quantitative reasoning skills. We have a number of upper level environmental science options available that are not necessarily required, but they are available if students want to pursue an environmental science track, because, or that custom pathway, if it is of interest to pursue environmental science. And I saw that you said, to build on that, would there be a way to take courses in the first year that keep the door open for this major, and another one as well, or for example, environmental biology major? So environmental biology is, we don't overlap with courses necessarily, because we don't want to tread on each other's toes. We want to make sure that we're leaving space for the different majors. And it is a different major. It is, this is a more interdisciplinary major, but you can certainly pursue an environmental science track or a custom pathway within our degree program. Environmental biology is focused on biology and the biological sciences as it relates to the environment. So it is a different major. There are certainly some topics and issues that maybe would be covered in the same in those classes, but in different ways. And so if you're interested in talking about that and pursuing one of those, pursuing environmental biology, I definitely encourage you to reach out to the director of the biology major. That's Dr. or Professor Matthew Hamilton, and I can put you in touch with him if you'd like to reach out to me at the end of the meeting.
And Caroline, you asked about the plausibility of doing a minor that's maybe a little bit outside the frame, and absolutely. So, I mean, even some of the minors that we mentioned will happen downtown. They're not spot on environmentally themed, right? So they're built around issues like urban studies or law and justice. You can fold them into your environmental trajectory and make environmental the adjective by sort of curating your minor work in that direction, but you don't have to. Putting aside the question of like, can we draw connections or relationships between economics and environment and foreign languages and culture and environment? Definitely standalone minors are possible, Those could be done in the first 2 years on the Hilltop campus, by and large, with some fill-in later, or they can be done partly on the Hilltop and then partly downtown, or they can be done downtown in the latter 2 years. And they don't have to be folded straightforwardly. And sometimes there is a lot of power and benefit in having things that are complementary but not convergent. And so to the extent that students want to do that, those are possibilities, and certainly all those options are very plausible.
So I want to be cognizant of people's time, and I will go on to Leila, your question here, but I'm also going to put my email in the chat just in case people have to jump off. Feel free to follow up with any questions and reach out to us. And I know Dr. Answer will as well. Great. So you can reach out to us anytime after this. But to Leila's question, in what ways does exploring this degree from a diversity of perspectives contribute and add to the experience? That is something that we are really excited about, how we have been working on both within the courses and actually across the trajectory of the degree as well. And so exposing students to different topics and areas of study from multiple perspectives is really important in pursuing any sort of environmental or sustainability issue, because these are complex and complicated problems. So we need to be cognizant of that. It cannot be a unidirectional framework, and we need to be thinking beyond that. And so I can give you some examples in courses where we're using case studies to kind of deep dive into a topic and do that from multiple perspectives, trying to think about the role that different people, but then also different components of the environment, how they're affected by some of these environmental complexities or environmental problems and some of the crises that we're facing. Randall, do you want to add to that as well?
Also by bringing in and straightforwardly bringing in a diversity of perspectives, which is partly what environmental justice is about and why we insist on it being a pillar of the program, is that it hedges against thinking about environmental issues purely through a green lens to fix the problem environmentally, but not address the attendant social and political implications as well. In other words, we can't move to a climate-friendly or environmentally friendly energy system on the backs of communities that are already impacted. The experiences and the uneven distribution of benefits and burdens needs to be accounted for. And so we can't only go toward better environmental or sustainable outcomes, but not also address the disparities and implications. Doing that would be a lateral move at best and a worsening at worst, obviously. And so the point is that we address those issues straightforwardly throughout our curriculum, that we're thinking about making social and environmental change at the same time. And we find that the two do go hand in hand. We need a range of perspectives and experiences to be included in those conversations so that decisions aren't being made external to people's communities and the locus of their lives. So we do take that point very seriously, Leila, and I appreciate you asking that question. So we have time maybe just to address a couple more before we reach our limit here.
Before we do that, I will just mention Sarah's last question on there. Will you be able to load the recording on the website? That is the plan. We need to, and thank you for that it's very helpful. I'm so glad that it is. And yes, the plan is to load this recording on the website because this is the most recent one. So we're planning to save and record this, or I'm sorry, and to post this recording to the website after it gets formatted accordingly. So thank you.
I can just briefly address Sarah's question above, and then maybe you can close, Jesse, taking Thomas's last question. Sure. Just, this notion of like how you would navigate between the two campuses, that is something that we're still working through as the downtown campus comes online. But generally speaking, students who make the choice to do this degree or any of the other downtown centric degrees will be committing to doing most of, if not all of their coursework in the third and fourth year downtown. There are some logistical ways to come back to main campus for non-credit bearing experiences, but generally speaking, students will not be coming back to the Hilltop taking courses. We hope over time the downtown campus builds up a unique and eclectic range of opportunities there that will be appealing to students and fill most of the needs and wants of students. Some of that, frankly, Sarah, will be built out as we go over time. But generally speaking, students will do 2 years on the hilltop and 2 years downtown, without being able to necessarily come back and take credit-bearing experiences in those latter 2 years. But again, the hope is that, we're building so much on that side of the ledger in the third and fourth year that students will be excited by that prospect rather than daunted by it.
Right, and then quickly, Thomas, your question, do AP Environmental Science credits transfer to any classes in this program? So not directly to the classes, but yes, if you receive the score, and that's done through through the outside of our our purview, but the credits themselves can be brought in if you reach a certain score, can be brought in, and if it meets the requirements, they would be transferred in as having met. You will get credit for them, but not necessarily for the requirements in the program. And that's because we need to ensure that all students have taken the same foundational courses, that you're building up from the ground together. And as a cohort, you're going through you're developing the same skills and knowledge. And a lot of that is skills and application. So it's not just about what you learned in AP Environmental Science, but how you're applying it and into different scenarios. And so those courses you would be taking as a first year student. And if you've taken AP Environmental Science, it probably give you a little bit of a start in the right direction. We're not going to cover the same exact content or anything, but you certainly will be building on that knowledge. And yes, Romy, feel free to follow up with yours with an email. Happy to answer your question.
I will
But
just say very quickly
sorry.
on that question, just that, all the sustainability tools are on the table in our classes. So absolutely, like any ways of addressing environmental challenges and environmental changes are on the table as we consider the full range of toolkits, and they do come up very much in our courses and in our conversations.
So with that, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us and for your amazingly awesome and insightful questions. It was really nice having
This
this
was your first
conversation.
class in environment and sustainability. You all get A's and you did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Yeah, this was wonderful. So thank you all so much. Feel free to follow up with any additional questions and have a great rest of your evening.